Well, welcome back to the HOG-POD for the next installment of this month's focus on female riders in the world of Harley-Davidson here in the UK and Ireland. But before we move on, I just want to say thanks to everyone that has listened and watched all of the previous episodes, and also all of you that have got in touch. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to make sure you don't miss any episodes.
This week, we are joined by a lady that many of you will know through your years of riding in chapters across the UK and Ireland, and most recently at the National Gathering of Hog Rock 22 in Birmingham. Our guest tonight is Bridey Dyer, and she is joining us to talk about a subject that Kenny and I couldn't possibly have a clue about, and that is being a female rider in the hugely male-dominated world of motorcycles. Welcome, Bridey.
Hi, good evening.
How are you?
Yes, all good, thanks.
Thank you very much. You got a cup of tea in front of you, haven't you?
I've got a Coke.
A Coke, that'll here. Snap. That'll do rightly. Good stuff. Well, listen, thanks so much for joining us. I know there's been a bit of to and fro in, but really appreciate your time on this because, as Jared said, what we're looking at this month is all about females and the motorcycle and Harley-Davidson in particular. So what we'd like to do is probably the easiest way that we start it every time is we ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself. So who is Bridey?
So Bridey is obviously the director at Oxford UK chapter. I'm just starting my third year as director. I've only actually had a motorcycle license for 5 years. But kind of as a youngster, I was very much a pillion. So grew up and spent a lot of teenage years around bikes and then sort of moved away from them. And then, came sort of back. I think spent years, I think, boring my other half with, I want to do my motorbike test. I want to get my motorbike license. And about 5 years ago, my birthday's in the summer, and I came home from work one day and I got taken out to the garage, and in the garage was a 125. And it was a case of put your money where your mouth is, go get your license. There's a 125 bike, get riding. And that kind of started me on the journey to where I am now.
25 years you have your license then?
Yes.
Wow. Well, listen, Bridey, tell us a little bit about your chapter.
So, as I said, Oxford UK chapter. So, obviously, our dealership is the Abingdon Oxford dealership. We fluctuate around sort of 120 members. And we sort of focus our chapter nights around a lovely pub that's run by Mr. and Mrs. Davidson. So it's all very, very good. And we're a mixed chapter. So we have obviously the majority of riders, and then we have some guests as well. We have about 30 females, all told, in the chapter, about 10 who ride themselves, and then the rest are sort of guest pillions. And we have about 13, 14 of us on the committee. And again, we're very well represented on the committee with females. So we've got sort of about 5 females on the committee. And I think we're a very sociable chapter. We try to do a lot of activities and events, as well as a very busy ride-out calendar. And between kind of March and sort of leading up to Ride to the Wall, really, we try to have an event every weekend. So we try to have something, whether it's just a social or a meal or just a kind of a chat and a coffee drop-in, and then obviously lots and lots of ride-outs as well. So we try to keep ourselves very busy.
Brilliant. I mean, 30 ladies, that's some number. I don't think we don't have anything like that, do we, Jared? Or have I got that wrong?
I don't think we do. We've a few ladies now, but I don't think it's as many as 30.
And would all 30 be very active, or?
Yeah, pretty much. So as I said, like sort of 10 are individual sort of riders with their own bikes, and then the rest are sort of pillion partners. And they, I looked at the list earlier today, just to sort of have a little look through to try and sort of, remind myself. But actually, our females are very active in terms of coming to all the sorts of events from chapter night every month to all the stuff that we do at the dealership and charity events, and then coming on all the ride outs as well.
Yeah, just on the ride outs. Don't get me wrong. Our own chapter is very, very busy this year, but I mean, a ride out every weekend. It must be hard to organise. Are they all sort of based on the same, just meeting and greeting and gathering and then going on a ride out, or would you have things like breakfast clubs and the Dunedin chapter have their saddle up Saturdays and stuff like that?
Yeah, so we have a mixture. So we either have sort of just planned ride outs. The vast majority of them normally meet at the dealership, but our dealership isn't open every Sunday. So sometimes when we do a Sunday ride out, we might meet somewhere else. Then we often do sort of Saturday breakfasts, so where everybody can come and meet for a nice sort of bit of nosh. And then depending on the weather, we can then go for a ride out afterwards, or sometimes we meet and ride to a venue for lunch. But yeah, during ride season, we try to have something on and something going on every weekend.
And how many members did you say was in the chapter again? Sorry.
So we fluctuate around 120.
But of the 120 with your ride outs, I mean, how good is the turnout? That's the question.
Oh, it is. I mean, it is just so variable. We can have a ride out where we'll have 6. And then we can have a ride out where we have 26. But we would very rarely, unless it's one of the big events of the year, we very rarely sort of get above 25.
Yeah. I think a lot of chapters are like that, they have big memberships, but when it comes down to the ride outs, you kind of have the diehards that are there every ride out. There are as many ride outs, and participate within the chapter as much as possible,
And I think that's one of the reasons that we try to do something every weekend, and we quite often try to swap. So, if we do something on a Saturday, then the following one we'll try to do on a Sunday, because we understand that obviously, people have got families, they've got different commitments. So our sort of philosophy is that if we sort of have a busy calendar, then hopefully across the chapter, it'll attract more people. They might not do as much. But I would say, sort of, as I say, we're around sort of 120, and I would say sort of 2/3 of the chapter are active, 2/3 to 3/4, and then we have, I think, as you say, I think as every chapter does, we have some members that we might only see once or twice a year.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of reasons for that, isn't there? It could be family, it can be work, it can be other commitments. As when you say about the bigger events, that if you have the bigger events of the year, what would you describe as your bigger events? I presume that includes the Big Chill.
So we have the Big Chill Rally, which is happening obviously this summer at the end of July, which we're very excited about.
Very good.
So obviously that's, it's a big event, and hopefully on the Saturday we'll have a big ride out or a big poker run. We haven't quite set the details yet. But our biggest event really of the year is our toy run. So we do, in September, we do a charity toy run to the children's ward at John Ratcliffe Hospital. And that will, invariably be 100 bikes riding through Oxford to take those toys to the hospital. So that's kind of, I think, our chapter sort of very large in-house event. And then, although it's not strictly a chapter event, we are very heavily involved in Ride to the Wall. And so myself and Stu, who's the head road captain, we lead the leg from Charwell up to the Arboretum for Ride to the Walls, and that can be 400 or 500 bikes. So they're sort of our big two, and we tend to use all our own road crew for both of those, with the help for the toy run of Thames Valley, which is lovely because we have a very good relationship with them.
Yes, I think it was, is it Duncan from Thames Valley? I think it's Duncan who he's got in touch there. I think he participates in the Ride to the Wall as well. The toy run you were talking about, that's the Jake Spicer run, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Yeah, I remember that right at actually, I think in the first couple of episodes. It got delayed last year, didn't it? For I think was it weather or?
No, it was the Queen's.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah.
So it was sort of like, yes, we needed to postpone because it clashed with the Queen's funeral. So yeah, we delayed it, and it was a little bit colder and a little bit wetter, but we were really pleased because everybody still turned out. I think 20 bikers came down from Mean Valley, to join us, but we had riders from Birmingham, Wolverhampton, Rolling Hills, Thames Valley. So, it's very well supported.
I suppose because of where you are, they would be your sort of natural connections, wouldn't they? The Midlands guys, be it Neen, Birmingham. Do you have a connection with Wolf Runa?
I'm not going to say we do a lot with other chapters. We don't. As I say, the biggest connection is probably the toy run. But we normally try to have like a big August summer party, which is the chapter night at the dealership. But we always invite sort of Bridgewater, Great Western, Rolling Hills, Thames Valley, New Forest. So we try to sort of have a couple of events every year where we try to sort of reach out to other chapters and kind of get them involved. We sort of did a thing early this year where some of us went over to Rolling Hills chapter night and then they came over to ours a couple of months later. So it's just always that thing. I think you're so busy sometimes just sort of trying to organise your own chapter events. It's easy to sort of to kind of reach out, but it's always really nice. And I think the Unity ride a couple of years ago sort of was a really good opportunity to sort of start talking a little bit more about trying to organise these sorts of events.
You seem to have quite a bit going on throughout the year. Where do you find the time for it? And tell me this, with so much going on throughout the year, and I know this is an issue for some chapters, but not all chapters. How's the relationship with the dealership?
So Oxford, we've had an interesting few years because there has been a very, very high turnover of staff at the dealership, including DPs, which has sort of meant really for the last kind of, 3 or 4 years, there hasn't really been a sort of a steady DP. So it's been difficult to sort of have a steady relationship. But recently, so at the beginning of this year, we had a new DP start at Oxford, someone that we all knew because he used to work at Oxford before he left to go to another dealership. So it was nice because obviously a lot of us knew him, so it was a sort of a friendly face. And, he is really making a huge effort to communicate with us, to kind of have regular meetings with us. And he is, I think, he's not only passionate about the brand, but he is passionate about the chapter. And he is genuinely interested in trying to have that as a working relationship where, we kind of do things for the dealership does things for us. We've got a biker down course this Thursday night that they're hosting for us at the dealership, obviously after hours, 6:30 till 9:30. So we're really appreciative of that. And he actually is wanting to start a sort of a new initiative for Oxford, whereby on the first Saturday of every month, anyone who's bought a new Harley can kind of come along, have a bit of a tour, have a bit of a talk about sort of, what the service that they offer, what the facilities are that they offer. And we're then going to have a ride out that leaves on the first Saturday of every month from there. So the chapter will be there in the morning, kind of chilling and drinking coffee so that we can chat to any new owners who are there. And then if after they've had their sort of tour of the workshop and had a chat with the DP, they want to come out with us on a ride out, then they can. So at the moment, that relationship is working brilliantly, and really happy at the moment.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I'm sure there's been an interesting sort of business environment for a lot of, any business really. I suppose the motorcycle business isn't immune to that either. I know that anyone that is not part of HOG, maybe the part of the HDRC, GB, or sort of not other non sort of affiliated, they always scoff, don't they, when we talk about the relationship with the dealership because they're entirely independent. But for people in HOG, I think that the dealership relationship is an important one. So it's good to hear that you've that's going steady this year. And as you say, a face that you recognise, it's a lot easier than trying to build a relationship, isn't it, with someone that you don't know anything about really.
And he sold me my very first Harley.
So on that, tell us about your first Harley.
So when I did eventually get my licence, I knew exactly that I wanted a little Sportster Superlow. And so I literally walked into Oxford Harley-Davidson, sat down at Johnny's desk, and sort of literally just went, that's what I want. in that colour with those accessories, and literally gave him a list, and he was just like, right, okay, you know what you want. Yeah, and that was it. Just had to wait for the phone call to then go and pick it up. But I was very excited. I am now on my second Harley. I have moved on from a Sportster to a Softail, but they're both black. They're both low. They don't look that dissimilar. Just a bit of a bigger engine.
You must have the same problem that I have then, Bridie, short legs.
Yes, I don't want to topple over. I have tried.
You're in good company tonight then. Don't worry.
You got your license 5 years ago and you went straight into Harley.
Yes, so I passed my test, and I think within 2 days, I went into Oxford Harley and ordered my Harley. It was the first motorbike that I'd ridden with a licence. Not that I ever rode a bike without a licence when I was a kid. But
of course, none of us did.
Knew exactly what I wanted. And that was it. That one, I just walked straight in and just bought my super loan. And then joined the chapter, I think in sort of January. So I think sort of literally 2 months later, I joined the chapter. And then 12 months later, I was the secretary. 12 months after that, I was the assistant director. And then here I am now.
Here you are now. But, I mean, in saying that you went straight into Harley, you know, I know from my own experience, you know, I mean, I hadn't ridden in 30 years, and I literally, after 30 years, took a whim and just jumped straight into Harley. But I found it very intimidating. You know, when I first went to pick up my first Harley, was it at all intimidating for you?
I was terrified.
Were you?
I was paranoid that I was going to stall it, drop it, fall off it. Yes, I was slightly worried, but it all went to plan, so it was fine.
Yeah, I think well, we've talked about it previously, me and Jared, but Harley-Davidson especially, but any motorbike, it's seen as very much blokes ride it and it's, you know, a man's bike. But, you know, thankfully it's becoming more and more the case where that is absolute nonsense. But tell me this, how did people that know you, family, friends, how did they react when you rocked up on your first Harley-Davidson?
I think people who know me and have known me for a long time, I don't think they were terribly surprised. I think they just probably thought how or why had it taken so long. But people kind of who don't know me as well, the people I work with or I sort of, you know, come across through friends of friends, I think they're always sort of slightly more surprised. And not necessarily that I ride a bike, but I think they're more surprised about how much I ride a bike or how much I do on a bike. You know, I try to do maybe 14,000, 15,000 miles a year on my bike.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that surprises people. So I did the Iron Hog earlier this year.
Oh, well done. Yeah, well done.
Wow.
And I did manage all 27 dealerships in the 6
Oh, brilliant.
That must have been a tightener.
So, because I did the COVID one 2 years before in 2019, which was, you know, it was much easier and you know, obviously much steadier because you just did your dealerships on the first day and then you went home and obviously you stayed in your own house, then you went out the next day. So it wasn't as sort of demanding. And then a year later, my assistant director and I, we said, oh, we'll do the full Iron Hog. And I think about 4 dealerships in, I got a flat tyre on the M25 and then spent the next 7.5 hours on the M25 waiting to be rescued. So I was kind of determined last year that I was going to do it. And it was quite a last minute decision because I sort of kept it was there in the back of my head and I just sort of literally got to a point where the weather wasn't looking too bad, although the weather forecast was not very accurate because it was very wet on day 2. And so I just sort of literally within sort of 24 hours made the decision I was just going to do it and just sort of booked 2 hotels and then sort of at 2:30 in the morning kind of climbed on the bike and off I went. And yeah, sort of 4 hours sleep, I think, sort of, you know, the first and second night. got an hour behind schedule on the second day, which sort of really affected timings. I didn't get into where I was sleeping until 11 o'clock at night, and I was meant to be on the road again at sort of 4 a.m. It's a weird one because I loved day one. I was having a whale of a time on day one. I thought, this is great fun. I don't know what the fuss is about. And then it got cold and wet on day two. As I say, got really behind with my timings. So by the time I finished on day two, I was kind of ready to throw the towel in and just go home. But then you kind of wake up on day three and kind of go, come on, I've just got to get back to Oxford. So
no, absolutely. Good for you for carrying on. Good for you for carrying on. I know we I think it was the last episode of last year, we were speaking to a guy called Gary France that does the tours. And he said about timings particularly, he said, see, anytime you lose, you never make it back. You just cannot make it back. And then you're behind the whole time. So this episode is very much about female riders and the challenges they face and the contributions they make, etc., etc. So can I ask you, have you ever had to deal with a situation or had to deal with negativity towards you simply because you're a female, whether it's, a grumpy old man or someone with an attitude from the black and white days?
It's interesting. So when it was first discussed, so when the sort of the director who was in post obviously said he wanted to step down, and we entered into conversations about me becoming director, I had a very interesting conversation with him and the DP who was at Oxford at the time, where that was discussed, where it was a case of, obviously we haven't had a female director or an assistant female director. How will people in the chapter react? And I suppose there was a sort of preemptive, okay, so what might happen is that some people in the chapter will say that they're not particularly happy about that, or they don't want a female as a director, and, people might leave. And I suppose luckily for me, the DP and the director were very much kind of like, but we're 100% behind you. And therefore, it's probably just worth knowing. And therefore, if it happens, you'll kind of be prepared for it. So it was in my head when I took the job on that might be the case, that there might be some people who react negatively. I'm going to touch wood because as far as I know, if anybody was unhappy, they left very quietly, but nobody ever made a fuss. And I, in terms of my own chapter, I have never felt anything other than supported. I've never had to deal with any sexist behaviour. I think the most sexist behaviour I ever encounter is when directors are in a room together and they're always referred to as guys, and then somebody might at some point go, oh, and girls.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it is because we do have a good female presence within the chapter. We've got a strong female presence on the committee. And I think there probably were a couple of people who were a little bit sceptical about me becoming director. And I don't know whether it was as much that I was a woman or that I was not that experienced. I'd only had my licence for 5 years. I haven't got, a huge kind of, 20-year kind of career behind me. But I think people kind of accepted that, I was keen, I was enthusiastic, I'd put my heart and soul into it, and people seemed to react and respond to that positively. I remember saying to my head road captain about the idea of, during ride season, trying to do something every weekend. And I think he thought I was a little bonkers. And that had never previous to that, it was always really once a month. I think that was kind of, we might do a couple of other things, but sort of the main premise was just to offer something once a month. So I think that raised a few eyebrows just in terms of trying to sort of raise the ante a little bit. But, everybody responded, all the road captains kind of mucked in. And I think we're lucky, with a chapter of just over 100, we've got 15 qualified road captains. And then, and we've got probably another 15 who, road marshal for us, who haven't necessarily done either road captains course, or there are a couple in there who were road captains but have taken a step back. So we do have a very healthy sort of road crew. And it helps, I think, Stu, who's the head road captain. Again, he's very keen, very enthusiastic, and he's very good at sort of marshalling the troops and sort of trying to sort of get the calendar organised. We're doing that at the moment. So the aim sort of by the end of January is that we can publish it, and therefore everybody knows what's happening all year. And I think that helps as well.
I think the qualifications for being within an officer role, and particularly yourself as a director, and this is my view, and some people will agree, some people will disagree. In fact, I know that they will agree and disagree. For me, I do not think that you need to have years and years and years behind you to necessarily be, a good choice to be in any position. I think particularly when you get a group of people together, you need the individuals that are going to, drive the chapter forward. They're going to push the boundaries a wee bit. I'm shaking my head whenever you said that some people may have been skeptical of a female director. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm in my early 20s, but it just doesn't come onto my mindset. Same with you, Jared. Our assistant director is a lady called Joanne, and she would bounce me and Jared around the room if we stepped out of line. She'd give us a clip. Absolutely. Can you imagine saying to Joanne, "I don't think you should be involved because you're a chick"?
No. But it's good to see that. It's good to see that diversity. That diverse attitude now that it's now coming out within the chapters. It can be very intimidating, joining a chapter, whether you're male or female, and to go as far as you have gone, Bridie, to director of the chapter. Fair play, But yeah, absolutely, But and I know you said that, you'd passed your test and you went straight into Harley-Davidson, right? But for women who are maybe thinking about choosing a Harley-Davidson, what would you say would be the biggest challenges facing them when it comes to choosing one?
I think it very much depends where you're sort of coming from. So I belong to a women's only motorcycle club. And if I ever do have any time where I'm not doing chapter stuff, it's really nice to go out and ride with them because it's an all-female group. And they have a very, very different perspective. And it's interesting because I'm probably the only Harley rider. There might be one, maybe there's one other, but it's predominantly a sports riding group, which presents me with some challenges sometimes in trying to keep up. But when you chat to them, I suppose a lot of them never even thought about a Harley. It kind of just wasn't sort of, when they were thinking about motorbikes, it didn't kind of just enter their mind. And I think that's partly the image that Harley have. And as you say, I think there's sort of two rules of thumb, really. If you think of a Harley, you might just think of a sort of an old bearded biker, or you might think of an MC group. And I think there is a stereotype and an image that comes with it. And so, as I say, a lot of the female bikers that I ride with outside the chapter, although they look at my bike and they absolutely love it, they just don't necessarily buy into the image of it. And they go for the sports bikes, which is interesting because I then look at the females who are within the chapter and who do ride, and some of them are incredibly strong riders. And again, it's just, I think, sort of their own preconceptions or their own knowledge. And a lot of them, I think, come from kind of insider knowledge that they've either had sort of other family members, who've come through Harley, or they've had some kind of introduction to it that kind of has allowed them to sort of see past some of that sort of stereotyping.
I'm glad you brought that up, Bridie, because like yourself, I'm the activities officer for the Belfast chapter and also a road captain. But I also have my activities outside of the chapter. And like yourself, I would do a lot of ride-outs here with a local motorbike group, not club. They're a Facebook group. And they're great. They're a great bunch of people. But I'm the only Harley. Right? They're all sports bikes and adventure bikes, etc., right? And like yourself, you know, you're constantly getting this, you know, oh, it's a beautiful bike, but it's a Harley. You know, but you brought up some of the challenges there with riding with bikes that are not Harley, sports bikes and adventure bikes. Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Well, we sort of, I mean, it's one of those things, the women's motorbike group, it's divided into sort of different areas. And sort of the group that I ride predominantly with are sort of kind of not Oxfordshire, they're actually sort of a little bit further east, Bedfordshire, that sort of, and, you know, I've never really like noticed when we go out riding, we all kind of ride sort of at similar sort of, you know, speeds and paces. But we have like a national meetup once a year. And sometimes we go like to places like Wales or sort of up to sort of almost sort of the North Pennines. And some of the ladies in the group, you know, they love their track days. You know, they spend a lot of time riding very fast. And so when we have sort of group ride outs on those occasions, some of the skills of those ladies riding those sports bikes, and a lot of them, you know, have them modified as well. So they're not just sort of standard road bikes. And it's impressive. But on a Harley, you know, well, especially on my Harley, and maybe just even the way I ride, it's not necessarily, you know, how I enjoy riding. And
but it's a different ride. I mean, it handles completely different. The cornering is completely different. And it's trying to get that through to them because, I mean, we did a trip last year actually in Wales, up around the 4-day trip up around the Snowdonia National Park, and there was like 25 road bikes and one Harley, right? And trying to get through them. Listen, guys, right? When you come to the bends and you come to the corners, remember, right? I can't lean as far as what you can. Right, you have to be careful here, and I was trying to get that through to him. You know, it's just a different world of biking. But what I did notice about it was there seems to be today a lot more females now taken to two wheels than there used to be. You know, it's almost become a craze now. You know, need to get two wheels, need to get on a bike. You know, it really has grown certainly over the last 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, when I passed my test and I got my license, I remember sort of looking to see if there were local female rider groups, and I only found one at the time. Now I'm aware of kind of 4 or 5 that I could join in the area, and it has grown. I mean, I think sort of. I think the joy of motorcycling, and it's interesting because I think in the media there's been an awful lot about good mental health and riding motorbikes, and that has been a lot in the papers, a lot in social media, and I think that has, you know, really sort of increased the sort of, you know, its image in a positive way. I think that's encouraged a lot of females to ride a motorbike, and certainly, as I say, the clubs that I know that I'm affiliated to, you know, membership has grown hugely over the last couple of years. And even, as I say, I used to have a Sportster, so I joined Sportster Sickness.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just massive. There's like 10,000 members now. And I ride with the Cotswolds group on my Softail Sportster.
Yes, of course. Yeah. It's one of the earlier ones.
And again, you know, the number of females in that group has grown as well over the years that I've been a member. And actually, the Cotswolds group is run by another lady, Zoe, and she does all the organisation for that group. And it's really nice to see, you know, lots of females out there riding. And it's one of those things as a director, you're sort of constantly thinking about how do you encourage people to take it up, to get a license. And actually, I think part and parcel of it is just being seen. The amount of people when we're out riding who will come up and chat to us and talk to us and see females riding their own bikes and want to come and have a conversation. And I think that as well just really helps to kind of encourage people to, come and find out more about it.
You said in your chapter you've about 30 ladies, I think 10 of them are active. Is there any possibility, or is any signs of the remaining, the pillions, of them maybe looking towards, do you know what, actually, I'll ride my own bike here?
Yeah, over the last couple of years, we've kind of I think, had like one a year. So the lady in the chapter who used to be the secretary, always rode pillion on the back of her husband's bike. And then he stepped away from the chapter for a short period of time. In that time, she decided that she would take her test. So she now rides her own bike. She's come back to the committee. Her husband's come back to the chapter as well. And they now have their own bikes. And I think, it is partly that sort of people join and then they kind of have a chat. We've got a couple of ladies who have joined just recently in the last 6 months, who currently are pillions, but who are thinking about taking their tests. And it's trying to sort of just give them, I think, the courage, because I think it is quite a scary thing to undertake. And you kind of, you worry as well. And again, if you think about lots of ride schools have male instructors, most assessors tend to be male. And you can request female instructors at certain places, but not everywhere can accommodate that. I certainly had male instructors all the way through and had a male assessor who really did make me giggle, because when I passed and he said, I have a little game that I like to play when anybody passes. He says, I like to guess what kind of bike they're going to go and buy. He said, I would guess you're going to go and buy a Harley-Davidson.
Well, here, staying on the female theme, one thing that we haven't mentioned here is the Ladies of Harley. How's that going within the chapter?
So for as long as I've been a member, we've always had an active Ladies of Harley officer. It is an interesting debate, and I know different chapters do things differently. And we decided that we would always have Ladies of Harley events, but that were open to all the chapter, so that we don't ever do ladies-only events. And it came about because we were talking about, would we want men in the chapter to start organising male-only events? And it is a difficult one, because obviously Ladies of Harley is, it's a separate entity in its own right that's obviously promoted by. So what we tend to do is we will host some things which are very sort of generically open to everybody, like, I don't know, Sunday lunch or go 10-pin bowling. But then what the Ladies of Harley might also do is advertise going to the cinema to see a particular film, which may end up just females going, or like an afternoon tea at a hotel. So we just tend to make sure that we have, again, a very active programme. They do, our Ladies of Harley officer, she does a lot of the charity coffee mornings at the dealership. So we just try to have a very varied programme so that we actively advertise the Ladies of Harley within the chapter and encourage them to come and do lots of different events, but without ever expressly making them female only, so that we don't ban the men if they want to come along. So International Female Ride Day, I normally always do the International Female Ride Day ride out. But again, if anybody in the chapter who's male wants to come along, but we do try to actively encourage male riders who bring their female pillions to come on those sorts of rides. And then obviously, sort of in the past, there have been things like sparkle tours, which have been sort of organised nationally, that Joe and Elaine used to organise and run. So we sort of try to get involved if there are sort of bigger events. I think personally, sort of most of my Ladies of Harley experiences have been the Ladies of Harley events at rallies. So normally at a rally, there's some kind of reception for Ladies of Harley, which is always a really nice sort of opportunity, really, just to meet other ladies from other chapters and make some connections. And certainly I would like a little more. We don't do any linked Ladies of Harley events at the moment with other chapters. And I think that could be quite a good way to sort of to branch out a little bit more. Because, as I say, we've got a limited number of females and an even smaller number of actual female riders within our chapter. And I think if that's what Ladies of Harley wants to kind of attract more actual people sort of riding and getting bikes, then I think that might be better done in a slightly wider audience. I really hope, I think you're speaking to Vicky Green at some point. I think it would be really nice to have a few more kind of national Ladies of Harley events organised, again, where pillions and riders, females, have an opportunity to kind of get together and chat and maybe sort of, not handhold, but I think maybe just have that opportunity to talk through the process a little bit more. As you say, try to give a little bit of courage that kind of, like there's nothing different between you and me. We've managed to do it. We've gone through that process. No reason you can't. And I do speak to, quite a lot of ladies who do ride pillion, who say, oh, I look at you on your bike and I think, oh, I would love to be able to do that. And it's kind of getting to do that next step and going, well, do it.
That was actually that was going to be my next question to you. Actually, do you join forces with sort of other chapters? I know over here on the island of Ireland, maybe it's just because the Irish are a lot more social than our guys. But we have tri-chapter meetups at the start and the end of the season, and our Ladies of Harley would they would connect with other chapters on here with three. So, and that definitely seems to be the key to success, is to, reach out to other chapters.
Yes, it was unfortunate. So after sort of the Sparkle Tour ended, we sort of did try to sort of keep a sort of a group going. And we sort of came up with this idea of maybe trying to twin chapters. So kind of a chapter that's not near you, but sort of isn't sort of, the furthest away. Where we could possibly have kind of like weekends where we would host, where a couple of female riders would go from Oxford to, I don't know, somewhere up Gateshead or somewhere, and would be hosted. And unfortunately, sort of, despite, I think, sort of, very good kind of, people wanted it to work, logistically, we just never managed to actually get it up and running, which was a real shame.
Why do you think that is? Is it a problem getting the word out? Is it a problem where some chapters are basically want to stay within themselves and really don't want to get involved? Or what do you think the issue is?
I think the initial reception seemed to be very warm, and I think there was a lot of people who seemed to want it to work. But then when it came down to people actually volunteering to take responsibility to organise it, then there were less people who were willing to take on board that responsibility. And I get that, I work full time, I get that, there is limited time. And, as I say, within my own chapter, I'm hugely committed to, as I say, between March and, sort of October, almost every weekend, doing stuff with the chapter. So I get that it can be difficult. And I think because a lot of chapters have very busy programs, it's also trying to program it. When's it going to happen? We initially sort of said if we all did it on the same weekend, and we could all kind of, sort of try to sort of, communicate with social media of who was where. And then it was just obvious that was just never going to happen, that, nobody could get, the same weekend free for everything to happen. And I know as a director, just even kind of, when we're talking between directors that like trying to like not clash when we're rally planning, it's sort of an impossible task almost. So I think, it's a mixture of sort of just life gets in the way a little bit. And I think, if you're lucky enough within your own chapter to be able to have enough people to volunteer for all the different jobs to be able to organise your own chapter, to then be asking people to start taking on other responsibilities, to then start doing links, it does become complicated.
Yeah. Going back to the, just touching back on the Ladies of Harley, Bridie, maybe it's just in on the island of Ireland here, but are there many events that are run, specifically for Ladies of Harley?
Within my chapter or sort of nationally?
Nationally.
I think nationally, no, but I think that's because we had a Ladies of Harley national officer. We then had COVID, and then there was a sort of a period where we didn't have a Ladies of Harley national officer, sort of in terms of being able to do like the Sparkle Tour and things like that. I think, Vicky Green's recently appointed to that post. I know she's already got plans to get all the Ladies of Harley officers together in Oxford in March. So I think hopefully there will be more opportunities. I hope there will be more opportunities, because I think that is what is needed. And I think also if there's a sort of I suppose if all the Ladies of Harley's officers get together and they all sort of kind of agree a remit of sort of what all the different chapters are going to do, that kind of also gives you a little bit of a kind of, like a protocol or a sort of a plan to follow. Because I think we've always just sort of done our own thing. As I say, it's always been a mixture of kind of, social events in the evenings, lunches, charity events. And it'd be good maybe just to sort of get a feel for what is going on in other chapters. And it's always good to steal an idea or two from somebody else.
I have my own spies out there. What's going on over there? What's going on over there? Has to be done.
It's difficult because otherwise, you either end up just repeating the same program every year, and otherwise, you're trying to reinvent the wheel, and it's kind of just sort of, it's always good, I think, to know what other chapters are doing, because a good idea is a good idea. So.
This is it, but it's difficult. It's difficult to find something that suits everybody. Do you know what I mean? And those ideas are few and far between, which was a good thing about, to be honest with you, which was the great thing about the HOG-POD, because it put us in touch with so many chapters, and and I personally think that has been very lacking within the chapter scene nationally. That there hasn't been enough information going out, because basically people have been relying on Facebook. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's difficult because, as directors, we obviously have sort of monthly meetings, but they're agenda meetings. So there's never really time to just chat and kind of find out what different people are doing. And so, we've been talking as directors at sort of trying to think about ways of creating opportunities for us to meet up. And, if there are a lot of people at particular events, maybe that's a good opportunity to have a few more informal meetings.
Coming back, Bridie, to the big chill, how much participation would you have in the big chill from other chapters?
In terms of attendance, we're hoping. I know that we've already had some people from Plymouth chapter. Thank you, Plymouth chapter, for buying tickets for the big chill. So, yeah, we would hope certainly, to get support from, mostly local. So, again, Rolling Hills, Thames Valley, New Forest. So we would hope that it will be well attended by those sort of local chapters to us. But, we kind of try to do the PR all across England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, in the hope that people will come. Obviously, we draw probably the vast majority from our own chapter. We do try very hard to promote it to other chapters to come along. I can't remember. Obviously, our last chapter rally was 2019, and we certainly did have quite a good spread from various different chapters. So hopefully we will again this year. I think it's difficult because I think a lot of people are very, cautious at the moment in terms of money and spending. And of course, there are a lot of rallies being run this summer. So, I know that sort of, I sat down with my partner to sort of try to work out, which ones are we going to go to? How can we afford to go to? So, I understand that it is very much sort of picking and choosing what you go to. So,
whilst your chapter rally does clash with one, not every single person in every single chapter is going to go to one rally. So there are tickets available right now. There will be links everywhere in front of us now and at the end of the show and in the notes. Have a look, get in touch, and Bridie and other guys would love to see guys and girls. You said this before, guys. It's a colloquial thing, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, Joanne's going to kick my nuts in, Jared.
So don't forget if you go to the HOG-POD page, there is an interactive map there. You'll be able to click on the chapter. You'll be able to find out what events they have coming up during the year, where to go, where it clashes with, etc., etc., etc. But in my mind, if I could go to them all, Bridie, I'd be at them all.
If I had the money and I didn't have to work full time, I would be at them all. I would be at all the European ones. I would be everywhere. I would be at Milwaukee as well as Budapest. But I think, it's one of those things. We have to pick and choose. But yeah, come to Big Chill. It's going to be a fabulous rally. And it's our 20th anniversary year. So we're planning on lots of all through the year. Basically, it's going to be a year of partying at Oxford chapter. And
it's somewhere else, because in UK and Ireland, anyone in the north and the south of Ireland, most of the rallies, Kenny, that people would travel over to would probably be up around Scotland, really, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's because of the boat connections, obviously. But Oxford, I think, obviously, you're right in the middle of everywhere, really, aren't you? You can come from Wales, you can come up from the south, you can come over from the east. You can even have my folk coming down from the north.
And it's beautiful. The sort of the rides around the Cotswolds are fantastic. So we've got some beautiful roads. So it will be a lovely weekend to get out and see maybe a little bit of a different part of the country.
We will we'll put all the details everywhere, so definitely check that out. So to sort of run us out here then, Bridie, what's your plans for 2023? What's on the horizon for you?
Well, as I say, it's our 20th anniversary celebration this year. So my agenda this year is just to create a party atmosphere and try to just promote Oxford UK chapter and to just have a really celebratory feel all year. We've got lots of pins and patches and merchandise. We are planning parties at the dealership. Obviously, it's their 20th anniversary year as well. So kind of lots of combined events, and then lots of chapter picnics and barbecues in the summer, and thousands of miles on the clock, including hopefully an iron butt, which is something as a chapter we haven't done before, but we're hoping to get a few people out trying to clock 1,000 miles in 24 hours. So just a few chapter challenges just to create a bit of a sense of fun.
I'd say 1,000 miles for the iron butt. That'll be some job for a couple of road captains. In fact, you'll have to take a few spare in case you break any.
So I would say my road captain is unbreakable.
Brilliant. Right, well, Bridie, listen, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great to hear about Oxford chapter. It's been great to hear about you. And for anyone listening, whether you're part of HOG or not part of HOG, or as long as you're riding a Harley, or in fact, would you even accept non-Harley riders to your chapter event, or do you hold a line on that? It has to be a Harley.
So you have to be a Harley rider to obviously be a rider with us. But there are open events, and certainly some of the ones that are being organised at the dealership, they will be open events where you can come along. So things like the toy run is an open event, so you don't have to be on a Harley to come on those. There will be a few more of those this year because obviously where Abingdon Harley-Davidson dealership is, next door is Ducati, Kawasaki and Honda. So there will be a few more open events to spread the love across all of them.
Brilliant. Lots and lots of two wheels, which is the best way round, really. So, well, Bridie, from me, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great to have you on. And as we say to everyone, you are welcome over in Belfast at any point. We've got our rally in August, right at the start of August, and you're more than welcome. So hopefully we will see you there. We have our tickets already.
Have you got your tickets?
Yeah, Hog and Bog, here we come.
Good. Hog and Bog, here we come. I look forward to seeing you at the Hog and Bog. And Bridie, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you tonight. I wish you all the best of luck for the future for your chapter.
Thank you very much. It's been fun.